Fact versus fiction.
Does he like Judas?
Tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be the Zodiac Killer.
You've got the shovel. Go on, Trooper.
Child abandonment is a fun plot device.
Back away, I've got a circle of sin and I'm not afraid to use it.
He's a drug dealer. Oh no, wait, no, it's worse. He's a theatre major.
It's not awful so far. Hey up and welcome to Fact versus Fiction, your favourite fact and fictional podcast. I'm your host for this week, Matt, and as ever, I'm joined by my good fact buddy, John.
I thought you called... I'm sorry, I thought you called him fat for a minute.
I would never call John fat. He is muscular and wielding limbs. No!
It feels like you had a vision just then. And like, no!
I think you just glimpsed the future.
Strapped in for this wild ride are, of course, the two Toms. You can introduce yourself in either order.
Sup, I'm Tom J.
And with that is established dominance. Dominant.
Dominant.
There wasn't any T-posing going on there.
T-pose with dominance, Tom. Quick. Oh yes.
Doesn't
all
quite
the
work
listeners
through the webcam.
I will
Tiny
say,
square.
listeners, his voice, his face immediately grew more severe when he T-posed. He went into it.
That's the power of the T-pose.
Committed to the bit.
T-posing is very serious business.
Anyway, I'm Corby, and as our new intro says, it's not awful so far.
Indeed, by the time you listen to this episode,
You'll have heard it like
I'll
5
be in.
times, provided I don't have to split any more episodes into 2 parts, Mr. Napoleon.
I'm sorry.
I'll have
Napoleon's
someone-
such a big boy.
No one's ever said that. in the
Napoleon, famous for being big.
Correction. Average height.
Anyway,
I know, but we jest.
Does anyone have a
but
hypothetical?
I digress.
Or are we going to do John's philosophical, which might make our brains hurt?
It's a spin-off one. It's the bloody.
Spin-off.
A spin-off.
You know, that side episode
No,
that
it's-
Socrates did on a Wednesday.
But basically, it's like there was a thing guy, a philosopher called Robert Nozick, made a concept of this thing called like a pleasure machine or an experience machine, where it's like you're basically a box that you walk into and you just experience space, complete pleasure and good for essentially the rest of your life, and you don't have to do anything, and that's it. Now, and ask the question: would you actually
I
stay
hate
in this
that.
box? Would you actually stay in this box or not?
No.
And no, but then I put a spin on it. If you wouldn't stay in that box, would you put your enemy in the box?
How big is this box?
Comfortable size.
That's the most important question.
Well, what I was wondering is if I could put my enemy in it and then move it somewhere, say a deep cellar vault or the bottom of the ocean.
So you're not concerned as whether they have enough leg room or not. It's just whether it's mobile. That's
Yeah.
what you're going to be. It's like it's a pleasure
Can
box.
I put the
and
box
knees
in the
are by their
ocean when I'm
chin.
done?
Pleasure box on wheels.
The pleasure box on wheels doesn't sound good.
That's just like I feel like that's what someone would call the like sex attacker van. It's not good.
Oh
I
god.
like to enter the pleasure box.
On wheels. Why are you saying that on wheels? Of course on wheels. On wheels.
Just
Makes it
the
better.
knowing the idea like behind the pleasure box, I find that terrifying that you would end up essentially
Yeah.
spending your life in perpetual stasis, but also in a state of continual pleasure. Just is a bit terrifying to me.
Yeah.
Because surely the point of life is not to just experience that single emotion.
Well, that was what he kind of posited that most people would opt out of the box because they'd like to experience experiences rather than just do them, just have them.
Essentially,
Pleasure
Rather than
forever.
just a 24-hour orgy.
yeah. I'm not
Except
gonna
it's
say
just you in the box.
you in the box and Danny DeVito at the ground level jacking you off. That's all the pleasure box is.
I mean, it does sound quite
Nozick had a
pleasurable.
proposition Danny DeVito being anywhere near the box, I'll tell you
The
that.
problem with that is he wouldn't be free to film the continuing seasons of Always Sunny.
Yeah, but the box will make you think that he is.
The box makes
just
you think
forget
that it's
that-
always sunny.
You'll be in that cult precipice. The new series of Always Sunny is about to start. I'm super excited. It will never start.
Oh wow, it is Always Sunny in Philadelphia. I'm not sure if that's a Freudian slip, but I did just say Philadelphia.
Philadelphia.
Americans, confirm or deny?
Oh, I think they've
they're a
got
bit
too much
busy.
on their plate right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I'd put... Because on the one hand, it's like they're going to be stuck in that... Your enemy will be stuck in that box for eternity.
Yeah.
But that eternity will be a pleasurable eternity.
Yes, of just bliss. So it's like,
Make a hammer.
hey, you'll never have to. Pleasure box. Oh, I could have used this helpful hammer. Of the builder, can he fix it? Yes, he can. No, I don't know. I'm not. I'd be open to the idea of sticking someone in the pleasure box just so they wouldn't bother me for the rest of my life.
Yeah, but they can't bother you if they're dead.
No, they can if the police get involved.
Well, you just got to be careful.
And as we all know, the police won't investigate them if they just disappear.
Surely their disappearance is just as likely to get them involved.
No, officer, that's just my tumble dryer.
And you just appear inside the box. Oh yeah! Ignore that. Ignore that.
Swirling purple, like just rave lights coming from the gaps in the doorway.
Just
Why
ignore
is there a
that.
sign on it that says pleasure box on wheels? That's the tumble
Why
dryer
doesn't
brand.
it have wheels?
It's a spin-off from Bosch.
Yeah, you get caught on technicality that your box doesn't have wheels.
We'll get done for false advertising, my son. No, but that'd be embarrassing. Just the idea of like it's a tumble dryer. Then just like you just hear a muffled Ambrosia for God from inside.
So why is a man in your tumble dryer screaming about custard?
Oh, it's a long story,
I
officer.
had
Would you
to
like to step
try
inside?
him.
I've got an extra box right here.
Step inside my
This
office.
one's on
I'll
wheels.
just box door.
It's the
Don't
pleasure
worry,
box.
we have enough custard for everyone.
The pleasure box is just a computer with access to broadband and a lot of questionable sites.
Well, that was part of the. I think part of what Robert Nozick was getting at, but yeah, about just having
That
it's one of
suspension
those-
is sponsored by the pleasure box.
We'd be definitely.
No, we're
upset if they ever listen to this.
Just in case that's a real thing, we're not.
I think scientists have figured out a rat there's a particular part of the brain that you can just stimulate it. Just
Oh,
because
there's
things
one in
of-
every animal's brain. They did it to a guy
Yes,
as well.
no, I know. I'm just saying they test it on rats rather than humans. It's just like.
Well,
Anyway.
anyway,
That's
John,
step one.
does the philosophical hypothetical in any way segue into what you're talking about?
No. Does it ever? Do we ever get a proper segue out of those buggers?
Once. We got it
Sometimes.
once.
No, you had the opportunity and fucked it up with the Animal
That
Farm.
was a good day.
Well, no, that was from topic to topic, not hypothetical to topic. Quickly, John, get on your segue and take us off a cliff.
Okay. I'm going to take you back briefly to the 15th century. Most of this can take place in the 16th century. The Holy Roman Empire, of all places.
Yay!
Bum, bum, bum.
It's a shit show right now.
And what do you mean, right? It's always been a shit
It's not
show.
here right now. But, hang on, saying it's not here right now makes it sound like it will be back.
I don't know. See how well the EU turns
The
out.
Holy Roman Empire will return in
Now that Britain
5.
is gone, we can reform the HRE!
Oh, God. Yeah.
Merkel, get my crown!
No, I'm talking about a man called don't spoil this, Matt, if you know this. Gottfried von Berlichingen, who is he was born in bloody 1480. Jesus Christ!
88. Born in Star Wars.
And he had a horrible time travel accident. No, 1480. Into the noble family of Berlichingen in modern day Baden-Württemberg. Always a good name, that.
Was it just regular Württemberg back in the day, or?
Yeah, it's all worse over time.
Slightly better Berg. No, he was he was born to a noble family back in the time, and as most noble families at the time had, often the son would often get put into the army at some point, and go off on campaign, and
the shoots.
yeah, and so it was for Gott, as they call him, rather than Gottfried. Gott, he entered the service of Frederick I, Margrave of Brandenburg-Ansbach. They're all the bloody hyphenated names in Holy Roman Empire. It's fine.
Title.
Yeah, he and he was only 17 when he did this, and he fought next year. He fought in the armies of the Holy Roman Emperor Maximian I, and saw action in Burgundy, Lorraine, Brabant, and also in the Swabian War. By this point, he'd grown kind of disillusioned with the whole idea of, essentially mostly people telling him what to do, because you have to remember this is 1500, so he's like, at this point he's gone from 17 to 20 in the army, and of course he's got that rebellious phase.
Yeah. He had his angsty teen phase in the army.
Yeah,
the worst place to have
probably the worst
one.
You can't tell me what to do. Yes, I can. I'm your commanding officer.
God. So please listen to me. I'm supposed to be in charge.
Pull that pin out the grenade. Wait, they didn't have grenades, but you get the point.
Brought one back from him from 1880.
What is that? A laser pistol? A what?
Laser pistol. But he'd at this point he basically met a knight who was like a robber baron, almost a robber knight at the time, with his brother Philip. They encountered this guy called Thalaka von Massenbach.
Damn.
Which is, what the Christ is that name?
Just for anyone who doesn't know, what is a robber knight? Is it what it sounds like?
Basically just I walk along and I just rob people, but I just happen to be a knight.
Isn't a robber of knights?
No, he probably would rob knights, but he just robbed everyone.
Pick up knights and steal them.
The whole thing is just...
is that he steals the night, it's his day forever.
That's mythology. Anyway,
I will defeat Batman by having constant daylight.
No, basically, Robber Knight's just much better equipped brigands at the time. So he made his fortune by looting, hostage taking, plundering, etc. And Philip and Gott went, "That's quite cool. We'll do that."
You're a very wealthy man.
So he started going into the Robber Knight trade, and
Can we not call robbery a trade, please?
Yeah.
Is it a trade though, John? Is it a profession?
It's a trade of
you can have an apprentice.
your
so
possessions
yes,
for not having your possessions anymore.
You can have you've got an apprentice, and it takes skill. So yes, it's a trade. I'd say it's a. You can probably go to like an apprentice college.
Like
Robbing Knight College.
Robber Knight College. First test, don't steal from everyone. No, but he almost got caught by gunmen in the service of the Swabian League in 1500. So he had to leave the area of Swabia because everyone there knew he was an out-and-out robber knight. So he was basically being hunted.
They outed him as a robber knight. It was a closely guarded secret until he was outed.
But he managed to escape and sought refuge in the winter of 1501 in Castle Sodenburg, which belonged to a particular relative of his. So he couldn't ply his trade in Swabia after that because he was too hazardous. He had to let the heat die down. And so in 1502, he entered the service of the Margrave of Brandenburg as a mercenary, where he fought against the army of the city of Nuremberg. Now,
this was long before.
This is the thing, because Gott was famous throughout his life for starting just feuds with certain people and/or cities. So he just
that's like you can go from 1 to 11. It depends on the day. Fuck
really
you
does.
and fuck your city.
So he has a long-standing history of Nuremberg, but so he did that, and he got some decent money out of that. And eventually, in 1504, he served under the banner of Duke Albrecht of Bavaria and participated in the siege of Landshut. Now, Landshut was an interesting time for Gott, because this kind of defined him, because what happened was a particularly lucky shot from a field cannon, we're not sure exactly 100% what happened, we've got two accounts of this, either crushed his right hand utterly, or forced his sword back against his arm and cut off part of his arm.
Oh,
so no, exactly what happened, but either way, right hand gone. Which was
the sword just shunk.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh shit!
I swear I was holding that a second ago. Oh wait, I technically am. And his hand's still stuck around us, still holding the hilt of the sword. It's just on the floor now.
Yeah.
Is this because I've never heard of the city you just mentioned. Is this all taking place in like central Germany?
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, Landshut. I want to say I'm trying to remember where Landshut is from my EU4 knowledge.
It's pretty smack bang in the. Let's see. I think it's in the north of Germany. I'll probably got this wrong saying that. No, it's right just south of Munich.
Oh, okay, yep.
Yeah.
Oh, so almost near the Austrian and what would have been Czechoslovakian border.
Yeah, kind of that nonsense. But either way, so he either had to have his bloody hand amputated or it was self-amputated.
Already got.
Yeah. Speed run this amputation.
Both happened, John, and his hand got crushed and his sword went, "I've got you, mate," and chopped it off.
Thanks, I think. Now, Gott did have a good couple of weeks depression while he was recovering because obviously he's a military man and his sword arm is gone. His sword hand is gone.
That can be a bit of a downer.
But then he remembered that he
has a left hand
previously.
He remembered. He had
interruptions. Okay, no, it's fine.
He had a pleasure box.
The pin is where line shut is, Matt.
Yes.
In there.
But what happened was he recollected a former knight that he'd seen before with a prosthesis as a right hand, which is just basically like an iron hook at the time. But Gott thought he could do better, so he went to a local blacksmith and he got him to make him a iron hand, which gave him the name from this point onward, and as he'd probably be known for the rest of his life, Gotts of the Iron Hand, which is a fairly bitchin' nickname. This is his first hand the first prosthetic hand that he had, which did have it had movable fingers, and you can see that it's got details where it's got wrinkles and fingernails carved onto it.
My
God! See what I mean, like made out of metal. Obviously, the last fingers snapped off there.
It looks like somebody stolen a hand from a bad 1959 robot.
It looks like the hand of the Iron Giant.
That was the first one, and it wasn't good. You could just it had one couple of hinges on the fingers, but that's about it. Nothing on the knuckles.
Looking at it here, you can see the four fingers. They're split into two hinges. Looking at it,
yeah.
But the thing is, you could lock it. He could lock it in position so he could actually hold a sword with it. So,
shouldn't he only lost his wrist area rather than his?
I think it was that's the end of it. It was kind of that bit onwards. So he kind of had the later. He has a later hand, which you can see he's got a whole.
Basically a mechanism that keeps it attached to the upper arm.
Yes. But yeah, so he managed to get on with stuff basically, and carry on with his absolute murdering. It was quite simple. But in the subsequent years, he carried on and just caused numerous feuds across the Holy Roman Empire.
It makes it sound like he turned up, got two people to feud, and then left. Because you're not saying he started them; you're saying he caused them.
Just incited arguments and left.
He started several. He started several, but then he also got involved in some of his friends' feuds and the like.
Gotcha.
Which is just because it was
him
a whole.
And the lads cut a feudy swath.
He just loves feuding.
Yeah, but yeah. So that was a fairly basic hand. Later on, he did. He did get a second one, but so he had his own band of, at this point, he had his own band of mercenary thugs, which he employed to fight, kidnap the rich ransom, attack merchants, and just
so we were still doing the robbery shite as well.
Oh yes, definitely still doing the robbery shit. Yes,
I was worried. I was worried for a moment when you first started saying about his hand that he was going to steal the other guy's hand, because he's got the background of being a robber. He might just let's put this into practice.
How intimidating would he's already intimidated Robert, then all of a sudden he's just now suddenly called Iron Fist or whatever it was. Iron Hand.
Yeah, Gotts of the Iron Hand, yeah.
The Iron Hand turns up, and then if you say no, he presumably punches you with his Iron Hand.
That's the thing, it'd probably hurt.
The other thing we said is that this is primitive. This is also the 1500s. This is cutting edge.
This is cutting edge for the 1500s.
This would be the 1600s now, because I think... 1500s, sorry, 16th century. Yeah, 1600s. Yeah, the 1500s, early 1500s, yeah. Because most people prosthesis at this time would just be an iron hook kind of wedged right in the right place. But yeah, so in 1512, a couple of years after, he just basically consistently reigned across the Holy Roman Empire and near the town of Forchheim, due to a long-running and bitter feud with Nuremberg, which he's not happy with. He raided a group of Nuremberg merchants returned from the Great Fair at Leipzig, so just stole from them. He did have a bit of a reputation as almost a bit of a Bavarian Robin Hood, because he would give the poor quite a bit of money too. Probably because he had so much money, but
Not that he just couldn't carry it all and ended up just
it might have been just
dropping it on the floor in the peasant village.
might very well be that. But
He accidentally dropped it on a peasant and knocked the peasant out.
But the thing is, hearing this, the Holy Roman Emperor Maximilian I placed him under an imperial ban. Now, this is a problem because imperial bans, they are known at that point as vogelfrei, free as a bird. It means you've lost all right to your possessions and legal rights. You're pretty much legally considered dead. Anyone's allowed to rob or murder you with no repercussions.
Does that mean he doesn't own his hand?
You have to take my hand from my cold, dead hand.
That's the thing. You could only really reverse by submitting to the legal authority. But at the same point,
if you did that, they'd just murder you on sight.
Maybe, but he managed to survive this for 2 years. I don't know how he managed to get around it for 2 years, but and eventually he paid this large sum of 14,000 gulden, which is like gold coins. So that's quite hefty for it.
So presumably he robbed a couple of knights.
I think he kept on robbing people till he had enough money to pay off the ban. Yeah,
Robbed his way to the relevant people he had to talk to.
Got robbed by a dead man.
Now, I think also in 1514, around that point, he got enough money also stashed away to get a secondary Iron Hand, which is a far, far better variant. I'll show you the picture of it now.
Oh, I know. I'm gonna say, I know you said secondary one, which just makes me think of it makes me think of the image where he's like, I'm gonna now replace my left hand as well.
That's what I was about to say. He took his left hand and put that one on there. That's a really nice looking hand.
It's
really
nice.
Yeah.
For the time.
Individual looking fingers. It's a thing where he could hold a lance, hold a sword, play cards with it, drink beer. It was great. In fact, I think there was a demonstration for some reason the people who had it in the museum thought, let's demonstrate this. And he could write with it, actually, hold a quill with it, which is most impressive.
Oh, wow.
I like how they've crossed out karaoke.
Direct his horse.
I know. They made a meme. But yeah, this was so that was very good. And both these hands are still in the museum in Jagsthorsen, which I think is near the castle where he lived. Anyway, but yeah, and 2 years after he did that imperial ban, he was supposedly taking life a bit easier because of the imperial ban. But then he thought, why not? And he in another feud with the Principality of Mainz and its Prince Archbishop, Berlichingen, so got the Iron Hand, and his company mounted a raid into Hesse, capturing Philip IV, Count of Waldeck, in the process. So they
on the way, they caught him.
Just on a whim.
And charged ransom.
And robbed his house.
And charged a ransom. Yeah, they took him ransom and they charged 8,400 gulden for was paid for the safe return of him. So he's almost got the money back from that imperial thing. For this reason, he was again placed under another imperial ban in 1518. After they took 2 years to go, we need to do something about him. But
so the dead man's been robbing again. Who? You know, the one you said was dead.
Yeah, but
the one without an arm.
He paid enough money.
He's dead.
I will say there's a
people. He's dead.
God, there's a picture of him in a.
Robbing people? That's illegal.
Ban him, but sir, we've already banned him once.
Ban him harder.
There's quite a few pictures of Gott. He tends to seem to have fantastic facial hair. This is one of him in more middle-aged kind of time.
I was about to say, like everyone important had fantastic facial hair back in the day.
But look at that.
Yes. Look how it looks a bit like he's got
depressed.
He must have something. There's no way it's that.
That picture looks like him while he was depressed, thinking about how he didn't have his hand.
He's looking at his left hand, isn't he? Like, oh, just this could be metal too. No, it's just.
What if I was all natural?
What if I became a metal man?
I need someone of equivalent size to exchange with.
Yeah. But yeah, no, the
terrible equivalent exchange joke.
I will say that the prosthesis is probably the best prosthesis of the 15th century. I mean, I can't see anything of even equivalent in that time period.
I'm not sure there's been much found to mention.
No.
Did they have prosthetic legs back in the day, or?
Yeah, pegs.
I mean, like, I meant, yeah,
The
I
leg of
knew they
peg.
probably had pegs. Did they have anything better than that by this point?
I think they did. Let me have a guess.
And yeah, but as I said, he still carried on with that despite the Imperial ban. And like, I can't recall if he actually got the second one lifted or not, but he, I think he eventually did. But anyway, it was in 1519, the year after he got the second Imperial ban, that said, no, you have to kill this man. He was in the service of Ulrich, Duke of Württemberg, who was at war with the Swabian League. You know, those people who chased him out of the country for all the robbing. So he
Wait, the Emperor says we can kill him now? Hell yeah!
yeah. Okay. Oh god, are those
Posting a variety of prosthetic legs.
those look so shit compared to the hand
This
he
one
has.
looks pretty good.
Yeah, but compared to that hand. Oh,
I think
that's
I like it a bit
fair.
harder
Yeah.
than a hand.
Yeah, the second... That one doesn't look too bad.
And of course, Corby, the pin. The pin? Peg.
Anyway,
Oh my god, this is amazing.
Matt's just gone on a rabbit hole for
Sorry.
prosthetics.
God. For listeners, he put a picture of someone on basically like it looks like the worst peg leg possible. It's almost like an angle, like a reverse knee.
But it also looks like he's...
and he's got a walking stick. He's a full chainmail and has a sword, and seems to be limping towards some sort of perceived
it's all
enemy.
done in that classic medieval, like,
Yeah,
painted style.
Bayou tapestry of this is awful, and just like it's
I mean, it really looks like he's gonna go for it. Like he's approaching slowly. Going, I'm gonna get you.
flying. I don't know what he's trying to
I
do.
wonder if this is from those old medieval drawings of knights fighting big snails.
Or the
'Cause
rabbit.
it looks the same sort of style.
Yeah. Oh, anyway, I was spent. Yeah, he was war of the Swabian League. He fought in the defensive place called Mokmul, which is an interesting place.
It doesn't sound real. I'm going to just say it straight up.
M-O with the 2 dots above, C-K-M-U with the 2 dots above, H-L. Yeah, it's a very interesting name. Anyway. Anyway, he fought in defence of that town for said Duke, but eventually was forced to surrender the town owing to a lack of supplies and ammunition. This was a point where someone basically screwed him over because, in violation of the terms of surrender, the Swabian League held him prisoner, and he handed him over to the citizens of Heilbronn, a town he had raided several times. Like, hello.
Hey, we know where Iron Hand is. He surrenders or given to you.
Is it the guy with the metal hat? Yes. No.
No, it's the guy with the metal leg. Why do they call him Iron Hand?
I don't know what you mean. Just kind of thing scratches his head. And his fellow knights who were helping out, there's George von Frunsberg and Franz von Sickingen. They successfully argued for his release about 3 years later in 1522, but only after he paid a ransom of 2,000 gulden and swore an oath that he would not to take vengeance on the league that imprisoned him.
Tell me he does.
Well,
Got a feeling he might.
Anyway, in a couple, he just did the typical nonsense of just raiding and helping various mercenary stuff until 1525, the outbreak of the German Peasants' War.
Ooh.
Now, Berlichingen led the rebel army in the district of Odenwald against the ecclesiastical prince of the Holy Roman Empire. So, according to his own account, because he did write an autobiography after this, he wasn't a fervent supporter of the cause. He was doing it to limit the damage they would do, apparently.
Huh.
Which,
Bullshit!
I can see that,
Bullshit.
but I'm also can see him taking the opportunity to get as much money as possible from rich people.
I'm making sure the peasants don't hurt themselves
Yeah.
by taking all this money away from them.
This money's too sharp for the peasants.
To be fair, he said he did this for about a month and then left because basically he figured out that no, these aren't military men. No one's listening to me. This is awful. This is just chaos. I'm going home. So he went home and he had deserted the command and returned to the Burg Jagstausen to set out the rest of the rebellion in his castle. Now this was fine
I'm
until
going home.
yeah. Now this was fine
Shit,
until
I'm out.
this was fine until the Holy Roman Empire won the Peasants' War. The Imperial forces won the Peasants' War, and he was called before that. And he I believe they went to his castle to try and get him out. If I remember right, let me find it. Apparently, they also made fun of captive nobles that they caught in the Peasants' War. One instance, they dressed the Count of Lowenstein in coarse peasant smocks, handed him a shepherd's crook, and placed him at the front of a flock of sheep. Okay, good for him, I guess. But no, But yeah. Anyway, I believe there's. I'm trying to find the right thing where it's. He yells at people out of a castle window. There's a particular thing.
I'm trying to find a story where he yells.
It was.
I know he's not. I
I
know he's not French, but now I'm just picturing that scene from Monty Python.
Thought you were second that.
I'm stirring your father smells of elderberries.
Yeah. Oh no, I think it's a different one. But it doesn't matter.
That was a different German noble.
No, it still was him. But I'm just trying to think. Oh, there was the thing that after that he was he was called before the Diet of Spear to account for his actions. And later on that same year, he was acquitted by the Imperial Chamber that said, "We can't be bothered. It's fine."
We know that he's just gonna do shit anyway. There's no point stopping him.
However, in November 1528, the Swabian League raised its ugly head and lured him to Augsburg.
What with?
I'm not quite sure. Basically, they were trying. I think they were trying to.
Hamburger.
I think they were basically trying to set up like a peace thing between themselves.
More knights.
More
knights for him to rob.
Yeah, after reaching Augsburg, under the promise of safe passage.
We've got some wealthy nobles over here. I'll be right there.
They're right under this box and stick. Come on.
Someone's just jiggling a sizable pouch.
I can only assume they were very worried about him and also really hate him because after they said, "Okay, come to Augsburg, we'll clear our issues. You've got safe passage." Because maybe you have to remember in 1522 he swore not to take vengeance on them again. So you think that
about that.
Yeah, he hasn't yet, to be fair. And after reaching out to promise safe passage, while preparing to clear himself of the old charges against him made by the League, they seized him and made him prisoner until 2 years later in 1530 when he was liberated. But only after he repeated his oath again not to take vengeance upon them, and also they made him promise to go back to his home area of Berg Hornburg and remain there.
Did they confiscate his hand?
Yeah.
Confirmed.
No, I don't think. No, I think they keep it. But to be fair to him, he did stay in Hornburg until 1540. So 10 years later, when the Charles V, the Holy Roman Emperor, released him on from his oath, and he served under him in the 1542 campaign against the Ottoman Empire of Suleiman the Magnificent in Hungary. So he's like
the guy in the onion hat. Yeah,
the guy in the onion hat.
Look at the what's his name? Get the fucking 60-year-old with the iron hand. Get him out. He's an old man at this point.
He hasn't gone back and raided those guys for being.
No, it's so he just keeps on raiding everyone. That's the point until but at this point he's 60, I believe. So young. Yeah, there's a good engraving of him here from bloody. It's a Wikipedia source, aren't you? If you get that, that's what he looked like in later years.
Huh.
He looks a bit like Kelsey Grammer.
He does, except a really long neck.
It's long neck Fraser.
Don't worry, long neck Fraser can't hurt you. He's not real.
God, that's also awful. But there's and he fought against Suleiman the Magnificent, and then in 1544, at the stage of 64, he fought in the Imperial invasion of France under Francis I of France, I think. So I think okay, so I guess. Oh, I'm not sure if that's saying he fought under the French. I think he must have fought the French. I don't know. But anyway, after the French campaign, he returned to the Hornburg, lived out the rest of his life in relative peace, and died at the age of either 81 or 82 in 62. So he lived. This man who just did nonsense all his life and kept robbing everyone and got his arm blown off by a cannon, somehow survived to 82. He married and had 3 daughters and 7 sons to carry on the name.
It's pretty good.
Yeah, pretty good. But there is a famous thing where basically there at some point when he was under siege by a he's famous for quite an expression because at some point he was under siege from a bishop of some kind because he had several feuds and bishops at that time sometimes had armies, so what can you do?
Yeah,
it wasn't just a man who
some
just turned
cities
up.
back then were archbishoprics as opposed to
Well, one of them was a prince bishop, which just sounds like it shouldn't be a thing.
Yeah, because what happened after he died? This guy called Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. He wrote a play called Gott von Berlichingen, which is a play based on his life and memoirs that was published in 1773.
Forgive me, I can't trust any man whose surname is von Goethe. He just sounds like he's forever bragging.
Von Goethe.
He's a very famous playwright, I believe. But
He's just wide.
But there's one hilarious line in the play which is kind of just burned into German culture now, which it's when a bishop wants to demand his surrender, he leaned out of the window and thundered back, I'm Arschlecken, which basically means you can lick my ass. Screamed like you can lick my ass, and which changed to kiss my ass, and that's basically where we.
Is that where we get the term "kiss my ass"?
Yeah, it's since then among Germans, it's known as the Swabian salute. That's so von Berlichingen is like slang now for arse licking or something like my arse or something. Which is he's just a kind of an interesting guy, and I'm just surprised this mad old bastard who. He had several feuds. He said himself he's involved in at least 15 separate feuds against several people. Cities of Cologne, Ulm, Augsburg, the Swabian League, as well as the Bishop of Bamberg. And which I'm not sure.
Of Bamberg sounds like a villain.
That's probably the guy told to lick his ass.
At least he wasn't the Archbishop of Bamberg. That sounds more evil.
That's the second layer of the Bloodborne boss.
But yeah, he's just an interesting guy, and he stuck around in like German culture forever. Like there's so many World War submarines in World War II units named after him, and and a lot of them had a lot of the submarines had an image of like a war glove, like a gauntlet, with the legend Gott von Berlichingen on it. Yeah, there we go. Well, during World War II, one of the armed merchant cruisers sent by the Kriegsmarine to Japan was named Gott von Berlichingen by its captain after Kriegsmarine HQ rejected his initial suggestion of Michael. So it's kind of like Kriegsmarine.
Do you think he wanted it called Gott von Berlichingen, but he said Michael first in order to get them to say no?
Or he was really annoyed about the Michael thing, and he was basically telling the Kriegsmarine HQ to lick his ass. We don't know, because that was the slang.
He did a bloody Spicer Simpson, where he wasn't allowed his original name, so he came up with a different name, which made them the same thing.
Yeah. But yeah, no, he's just he's a very interesting man. I'm just surprised he managed to continue a career after the age of 24, losing an arm, and died only 82. I don't know how he lived that long, but especially because of how many years he's been in prison.
I'm surprised it was only 15 feuds. I feel like he dumbed it down.
Oh, no. 15, those are particularly
those are the ones he knows about.
No, those are 15, proper. He might have.
Those are the well documented.
Dumbed it down a bit.
Those are the A-tier feuds.
Those are A-tier feuds. Those aren't just raids. Which
if I had to pick 15 of my favourite feuds.
Yeah, pretty much. It's got a wonderful suit of armor I'm just going to put up here for him, which was the stuff he wore.
Oh, that's a wide suit of armor. Holy shit, look at the hips on that thing.
I mean, let's be honest, Matt. He was a noble, so he could afford to be dummy thick.
That is a dummy thick suit of armor. Holy shit.
But yeah, he was just... it was just funny how he just kept on feuding with everyone, and yeah, I think he did get back to the Swabian League.
Why are his legs so long compared to his body?
Oh no, that's just the way that fucking those suits of armor look like.
Okay.
No, he hasn't got a tiny.
It hasn't been fitted for him. He's only got a tiny chest.
It's fine. But no,
like some kind of weird Dark Souls creature. He's over here.
Who probably has been used who probably was inspiration for the Berserk character Guts, nice. who has an iron hand as well. So that was,
and everything worked out for him.
No, it did not. Anyway, but yeah, just this very famous knight in the Holy Roman Empire who inspired plays and written out of him, and also probably gave us one of our favourite vulgar expressions.
I was about to say watch Berserk, and then I realised that's a very questionable thing to tell the people to do.
No, read Berserk. The manga's better.
There's one good adaptation of Berserk, and by good,
we don't talk
passable.
About it. Anyway, yeah, that's my whole thing. Just got to the Iron Hand. Funny lad. Actually, I would think he'd qualify as a mad lad of the time.
Oh, I get the reference.
agree
He's got
with
to
that.
the Mayan hand, so they called him Guts as opposed to Gots.
Yeah. But, yeah.
I'm connecting dots in my head that weren't there.
Has it been a slow day, Corby?
Yeah, I've done nothing today, Matt. Okay.
Yeah, no, it's I know. I like his facial hair, I like his style, and
That wasn't when you said at the start. That's what Matt. That wasn't the guy I was thinking of. I was thinking of the guy who ran around Bohemia telling the Holy Roman Empire to piss off, and it was just that really good general.
That's like that could be any of the Potebrads,
Yeah.
Matt.
yeah, the Hussite general. I'll talk about him at some point. He's cool. But no, this is this guy, because I thought, well, there's a bit of swearing involved where you just lean out of windows and swearing at bishops, and just
And that's
He's a holy man. He's a holy man.
he's fine. But I love the fact that like an end of. It's almost like a movie thing where the Holy Empire comes this old 60-year-old man and just like, I need your services. Oh, I'm all washed up. I'm out of the game, and just like that. And like, no, apparently not. Apparently he's completely
This
fine.
is a reoccurring thing with your stories, because there was that hunter guy in the Halloween special who came out of retirement to kill the bear.
I like those kind of stories. Yeah, there was that. I like these kind of stories. They're funny. Also, the idea of like
John's type is grizzled veterans.
Ah.
Yeah. Yours isn't.
No.
Oh.
Then your tastes are wrong, sir.
John, I do a segment on anime every 2 weeks. Do you really think my type is grizzled veteran?
There's some
Joseph-
grizzled veterans in anime.
Joseph Joestar.
Anyway, we're not on Fiction Week this week.
Anyway. No, it's fine. Anyway, Matt, take it away from me.
So unintentionally,
Yeah.
I know how occasionally,
Take it away.
or like for the most part, we'll try and make sure ours are somewhat themed. But this week, me and John didn't talk about what we're doing, and I have somehow also picked a military commander who has also left us with a famous quote and term.
Oh.
So completely unintentional.
Napoleon Part.
match.
It's Napoleon Part 2. Fuckos, buckle up.
It's not Napoleon Part 2. Don't worry. But I am, as I say, talking about a famous historical general, or at least famous to me and anyone who studied classical history.
What point does history become classical?
Oh, when the music gets funky.
The
I don't know
80s?
why, but ancient Greece and the Rome is called the classical period, because I think the text would dub the classics in the Renaissance, and so the term is kind of stuck. So we are going back to the ancient world. This time, the figure I want to talk about is older than the previous generals I've talked about. So we're going back before Aurelian and before Napoleon and Caesar and all the other really famous generals. Talk about somebody who, in their time, was considered to have unmatched martial prowess, to be benevolent to his people, and just loved by his soldiers, and apparently feared by Rome. And I can't for the life of me work out why.
Is it because he was a big monster?
No! I can't understand why he's held in such high esteem, having researched it, because to me, he just seemed average.
Oh, we're about to piss off a lot of historians, aren't we?
I'm about to piss off some classic historians.
Now, remember the famous Gott's expression where you want to tell Matt off? It's all right.
Anyway, now that everybody's here and hydrated, I shall begin.
My ears. I'm sorry, listeners.
Oh, sounds like you need a cool, refreshing glass of water.
And a COVID test.
Are we
Fact versus Fiction, sponsored by
by
water.
water?
The concept of water.
Stay hydrated.
Simping H2O.
Oh.
Remember,
So-
you too could drown today for the low price of your life.
Wow!
I'm taking pictures of water, so yeah.
Speaking of drowning and possible death by liquid,
Oh,
Alexander the Great died in 323 BC.
Not
Possibly
so
from
great
alcohol
anymore.
poisoning.
Alexander the mediocre. good people live. No, he's fine.
Was that
So,
it?
pretty much everybody's heard of Alexander the Great. Like, I think he's one of the few
Yeah.
historical figures everybody's heard of. I'm not about to piss off people saying, because Alexander the Great was great. I'm not talking about Alexander the Great. You know, a guy who conquers Egypt from Greece to India in like 15 years. Pretty fucking impressive. And like he was the benchmark set for pretty much all of the classic.
He set the speedrun record.
Basically, everybody used him as the benchmark to grade their achievements because Alexander was basically, to quote a podcast, they're like, he basically said Alexander will always have done everything faster than you, better than you, and younger than you.
Oh, he died when he was like 26, wasn't he?
Yeah, he died, I think, when he was 26, between 26 and 30. I can't quite remember. But even Caesar is said to have like lamented in front of Alexander's tomb that he had done nothing with his life, and Caesar is the reason the Roman Empire became the Roman Empire.
Oh, sorry, 32. I just looked up.
Yeah.
So he had a couple more years. Not that many.
Yeah. So not that many. But as I said, Alexander's empire stretched from Greece to India and imploded pretty much immediately after he died, and got split among various generals, and they split up into territories to the point where you got Egypt, which is obviously where Egypt is. You got the Antigonid Greece, which is a lot of Asia Minor, and bits of southern Greece, as well as Thrace, and then the area that is Macedon, but it wasn't called Macedon yet, for whatever reason. I don't know, it should have been called Macedon, but it wasn't called Macedon.
The pod became Macedonia.
It was technically like Fiji or some weird thing. Anyway, it doesn't matter. This was all followed by a series of battles that was basically known as the Wars of the Diadochi, which was the term used for the different territories owned by the generals. The post-Alexander world was brutal, bloody, and only stabilized about 20 years after his death, after lots of fighting, coups, and murders. And I use the word stabilize loosely, because as we're about to see, it wasn't that stable. So it was into this world that a young boy called Pyrrhus was born in the tiny kingdom of Epirus, which sits where Albania is nowadays, just below.
No more Balkan conflict, please.
Like the crisis of the 3rd century, which is all the crap Aurelian had to deal with, and all ancient history in general, the dates are going to be a bit sketchy. So it's not going to be 100% accurate. I'm going on like what I think is considered the most accurate dating. So he was probably born around 319 BC, and he was technically a second cousin of Alexander the Great himself. So pretty important figure, or his family is pretty important. However, Pyrrhus' family was murdered when he was 3 in a coup, and he was spirited away to Illyria, which is kind of modern-day Croatia area up that coast.
That's an awful place to be.
It's a lovely place.
It is a lovely place.
It's like, not in that time period.
But at the time, it was owned by what was considered barbarian tribes by the Greeks. So Cassander, who was the ruler of what was basically Macedon, seemed content to leave Pyrrhus and installed a puppet on the throne of Epirus called Neoptolemus, there we go. And so Pyrrhus was left alone in Illyria, like, it's all right, he's a kid. It's not going to be a problem. Even when his dad decided to pop back to Epirus and got killed by Neoptolemus when they met in battle, Cassander was like, it's fine. We don't need to worry about Pyrrhus. He's not a threat. So we don't know a lot about what Pyrrhus did when he was in Illyria. There were no written records, but we do know that when he became 11, his guardian, which was an Illyrian chief named Glaucius, I think is how it's pronounced. Yeah, Glaucius, invaded Epirus, deposed Neoptolemus, as I said, the man who killed his father and overthrew the throne, and Cassander was too busy somewhere else, presumably fighting the other Diadoches to stop Pyrrhus taking his throne back, and then presumably was like, you know what, it's fine. This guy keeps acting like things are fine, and it kind of comes to bite him in the ass.
I will say one thing, that I think Life of Brian has ruined me, because I'm looking for a pun in every one of these names. That is the issue.
There might be one later. But like, if you get one, we'll pause so you can make it. So Pyrrhus was installed as king of Epirus, took back his right throne, and was ruled as, quote, a barbaric king until he was 17. And I will clarify that this is what the Greeks referred to him as barbarian initially, because he was raised by the Illyrians and they saw their culture as barbaric. It's not, Hellenized and democracy, because Pyrrhus was one of the few... It's the weird thing about ancient Greece is that for a long time, they weren't democratic even after democracy had been founded. It was only the city-states that were truly democratic. Things like Macedon, Epirus, the Seleucid Empire, Egypt, which were all part of the Hellenic world, were all ruled by kings, essentially, or the equivalent of them. So the Greeks, people there, weren't happy that they were being ruled by a king, saw him as a barbarian, and eventually he got, booted out. So in roughly 302...
He got off mildly then.
He got off mildly.
He didn't
got
die.
Off mildly. He got off mildly because he went to a wedding. In 302, Pyrrhus headed back to Illyria to attend the wedding. I think it was his brother-in-law or someone related to the Glaucius, his Illyria, had been his guardian. And while he was away, Neoptolemus, who he didn't kill, and this is going to be a recurring theme with Pyrrhus, is that he doesn't kill people he should. Neoptolemus returned, turfed him out with the people because they were sick of being reliant on Illyrians and basically being a client state, which was essentially the same as being a puppet, or like the country you are the client of is essentially your overlord. And you have to pay him tribute and stuff. Pyrrhus failed to retake his throne, and rather than flee to Illyria, he fled to the court of Antigonus I, who was the head of the Antigonid Greece, which was, as I say, Asia Minor and a good portion of southern Greece, excluding a lot of the like Athens and Sparta, for example. They weren't included. The Peloponnese kind of area. When he was at the court of Antigonus, he was welcomed as a true relative of Alexander and learned how to negotiate court intrigue and be a general. Antigonus is quoted as saying, "Pyrrhus would be the greatest general of his time, as long as he lived long enough," which is a bit of a mouthful. It basically speaks to the danger of Greek court politics. Because Greeks can say what they like. They were fucking nasty in court politics. You think the Romans didn't have nearly as many people in their politics as the Greeks did? Like, reading like some of Thucydides and Herodotus' histories, it's a fucking mess. It really is. Fascinating, but a mess. Anyway, in roundabout 301, the Diadochi were back at war. The leaders of Thrace, which I think it was just called Thrace, I couldn't find what it was actually called, but is essentially the territory around the Bosphorus. So the Dardanelles, that kind of area, had allied themselves with the Seleucids and invaded Antigonid Greece. And at the Battle of Ipsus, both sides met with roughly 80,000 men each, which for ancient Greece is a massive fucking army. Battle. Jesus. It's a huge battle. And it was a very decisive battle because despite the fact that this was Pyrrhus' first battle as well, despite the fact that Pyrrhus commanded his cavalry quite well, routed the enemy in front of him, was a shining example of how to be a warrior, the rest of the Antigonid army buckled and crumbled, and pretty much all of Antigonid Greece was split between Thrace and Seleucia, with the exception of, or Seleucid Empire, Seleucia, whatever term it is, with the exception of their holdings in Greece. So Pyrrhus fled with, I think, his brother-in-law called Demetrius. They fled to the southern Greek areas, and basically Demetrius went off and fought in Thrace for a bit, while Pyrrhus was basically told to piss about and raid just the general area. so Pyrrhus spent
piss about and raid.
Spent about 3 years pissing about and raiding Greece until 298, where I wasn't entirely sure what happened. I couldn't find too much information on this, but essentially the Diadochi Wars wound down again, and Pyrrhus got sent as a hostage to Egypt. And now a hostage in these times didn't really mean you were a hostage. You were an honoured guest. You were free to do what you want within certain things.
Like
you weren't allowed to go
ward.
back home. A ward, essentially.
Exactly. Ward, essentially.
So he was an honoured guest of King Ptolemy, who was the king of Egypt at the time, and it's pronounced Ptolemy, not Ptolemy, like some moron was trying to tell me at uni. Ptolemy. He is silent.
Like pterodactyl.
Like pterodactyl. Which I'm pretty sure is the example I gave to him. So while Pyrrhus is there,
head of the Ptolemaic dynasty, I assume.
Yeah, because the Ptolemaics, off tangents slightly, they were around until Caesar conquered Egypt. Cleopatra was the last daughter of Ptolemy the 16th or something mad like that. They were all inbred. It was horrendous. Which speaks wonders that Cleopatra wasn't inbred. by the sounds of it. Obviously, I haven't been there and checked.
I mean, she might have been an ingrown photo. We don't know.
Anyway, while Pyrrhus was there, he ingratiated himself very well with the court, impressed them with his hunting and fighting skills. He did such a good job that Ptolemy allowed Pyrrhus within that same year to marry his daughter. So Pyrrhus at this point is essentially in exile because he can't take Epirus back because Cassandra's still alive and will probably stop him when he comes back. Antigone Greece is no more. But it speaks to at least he must have had a certain level of charm and skill and general personal aura and charisma to have the king of Egypt go, yeah, you can marry my daughter, even though you've got nothing going for you.
Hey, I like you, kid. Have a daughter. There you go. Carry on.
Saying he had nothing going for him.
It's his 11th one, but who gives a shit?
Saying Pyrrhus had nothing going for him. In 297, Cassandra died. So Pyrrhus was like, you know what? I might be able to go home now. So Ptolemy was basically like, okay, have some money and some soldiers. Go take back Epirus, but you've got to be my bitch.
That's very fair, considering.
Pyrrhus was like, yeah, all right, that's a fair
Pretty good deal.
So upon his arrival, he presumably had a few skirmishes with the false king Neoptolemus, the guy who had usurped it and whatnot. But eventually they had a meeting and came to a power sharing agreement, and then both immediately started plotting to kill each other. Because, we'll work together, but don't fucking shank you when I can. It seems that Pyrrhus kind of just went, fuck it, and invited Neoptolemus to dinner and promptly murdered him and his family at the dinner table. So, yeah.
It's a bold move.
It's a bold move, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off.
Deploy the red wedding strategy.
Just the flute start playing some funky tunes.
What's it with you and funk today?
I don't know. Anyway, as undisputed king, Pyrrhus then set about using what he had learned in the east to reforge the Epirate army into one that basically would be able to compete with Macedon and Thrace in terms of combat effectiveness or skill. Because initially, Epirus, going back to the whole point of him being a barbarian king, Epirus was at the time, its army was mostly tribal levy. So no one was really dedicated soldiers, he didn't have dedicated generals. No one was really trained, and this is in comparison to Macedon's armies, for example, which were fought in like hoplites and phalanx with giant sarissa pikes, which were like 12 foot long. So Pyrrhus basically took all he had learned, reformed the army over a period of about 3 years, and ended up having a force about 20 to 25,000 strong, all professional, fighting in the Macedonian sarissa phalanx. And he turned his cavalry into basically being a pseudo form of Alexander's companion cavalry, which were basically shock cavalry, essentially cataphracts without the armor, with giant 12-foot lances, just designed to break the front line with a single charge. And what they do is they would cycle charge, so they would charge, fight briefly, run away, and then charge again, which is going to piss the Romans off, as we'll see.
Oh yeah,
stand and fight, coward!
Never up.
I feel like it.
But basically, Pyrrhus made Epirus's army super good. So that took about 3 years. In 294, Cassandra's sons, who had Macedon left to them, decided they would have a little civil war because they didn't get on very well after their mum died. I don't know how their mum died. It said she was murdered. I don't know who murdered her, but it made them not happy with each other.
No, I imagine.
This is a weird name. What are you going to say?
How old is Pyrrhus at this point?
Pyrrhus would be, if he was 18 in 301, he would be 27. No, 25.
All right, fair enough. Yeah, cool.
Somewhere
around that point. A youngish man, anyway.
Yeah, he'd be 25, 26. So
mid to late 20s. Even.
Mid to late 80s. He's aged so fast. So Cassandra's sons, who were called Alexander, that's a good normal name, and Antipater, spelt Antipater. So I keep wanting to call him Antipater. Antipater. But it's pronounced
every Peter in the vicinity, watch out.
It's pronounced Antipater.
Like, and I've heard
They-
like the old name Antipatus, but never Antipater.
I
An
think it was a
antithesis
one-off, and they
is the opposite
immediately
of something.
regret it. They had a little fight, and Alexander lost. So he fled to Epirus and begged Pyrrhus's help in exchange for southern Greek territories, which, if you picture Greece, you know, like the bottom half, which has like Corinth and Sparta on it.
Yeah.
Pyrrhus would have been given control of all the territory on the other side of that strip of water. So, not that section, but the other section. We'll get a map of Greece.
How ballsy is it to name a kid Alexander within living memory of
Yeah.
I mean, I get getting your hopes up as a parent, but
A lot of pressure on that kid's shoulders.
A lot of pressure. Well, you know, they come to regret this in at the end of the year. So Pyrrhus agreed and promptly conquered all of Macedon without much trouble, because he'd just reformed his army, and the other guys had just fought a civil war, so presumably he had more men and better men.
They didn't have enough men to form the phalanx.
Basically, his phalanx was bigger than Antipater's. He put Alexander in charge, and Antipater fucked off.
I'm gonna say, how the fuck does like phalanx on phalanx work? It's just 2 shield walls, isn't it?
It is essentially, well, these were using, they were Sarissa phalanxes, so it was 12-foot pikes.
yeah.
So
big
over a 12-foot like stretch of land, they would poke at each other.
I also like that that's a name that's its actual name today that's named after a weapon in ancient antiquity, Sarissa. I've met one or two. It's like it's cool. I like that name.
I imagine they had really, really buff right arms from having to hold that thing. Not in the way you would think normally. Anyway.
Oh no, they did a lot of that on the side as well, Matt.
Well, you know,
I must train.
Everyone bangs everyone. Antipater ran to Thrace and had a conversation with the king Lysimachus, which is it's spelt weirdly, but it's surprisingly easy to pronounce. And he was basically going, yeah, that's how long a Sarissa.
To be fair, you can still hold it with 2 arms, but you have to.
Yeah, so the way the shield was designed was that it was rather than the hoplon, which was the big one that covered your whole body, the Sarissa shields were smaller to let you two-hand the pikes. Yeah. But you obviously lost defense.
But you see, you lose defense, but you still got to deal with this. Fuck. It's like fighting a hedgehog that hates you.
This is a nature watch. Spring watch, you lied.
I almost like fighting a sentient hedgehog. I was like, no, hedgehogs are aware of themselves. It's fine.
Antipater went to the king of Thrace, Lysimachus, and was like, help me take my country back. And Lysimachus went, I can't fucking be bothered, mate. Just come to terms with your brother. It would be much easier for all of us. Seleucus is getting uppity. I don't want to have to move off my border.
Sort your fucking family out.
Basically. Basically, yeah. They reconciled. They were like, fine, we'll do joint rule. Fine. And Pyrrhus buggered off with his new territory, having proven his mettle and impressed many of the Macedonians, which will come back to bite the Macedonians later. Unfortunately, Pyrrhus's brother-in-law, Demetrius, who we haven't heard of for a little bit, who was ruling what remained of Antigone, Greece, in the bottom of Greece, then invaded Macedon in the same year, murdered Alexander. I think Antipater fled to Thrace again. And when Demetrius took everything over, he basically got all the Macedonian troops in front of him, and then just told them all that Cassandra's family had murdered Alexander the Great, and apparently they believed him.
To be fair, I always appreciate a good spin artist when it comes to this shit.
So Antigone, Greece has gone from being a couple of cities in the south to now Macedon, and there's cities in the south. So Antigone, Greece is coming back. For whatever reason, I couldn't find out why, Demetrius then decided he was going to attack Sparta and Epirus, presumably to unite all of Greece and like restore Alexander's legacy.
To be fair, so you can say, "Hey, I've got Greece," rather than "Hey, I've got." Yeah, I can understand that.
Hey, I've got Greece on VHS, starring John
It's really good. It's John Travolta's mediocre movie.
Oh, and he's pissed off them as well.
He looks 50 and he plays a 17-year-old.
It's to die for. So during this war, which took place between 293 and 289. So it was fairly long.
Yeah.
Basically, Demetrius attacked all over Greece. A lot of the Greek cities that were under Antigonid rule revolted and were like, get the fuck out. We don't like you. You're a king. Democracy. Woo. And Pyrrhus took this opportunity to invade with an army now 30,000 strong, and he raided into Macedon and took a few cities, exacted tribute, and then retreated when Demetrius turned up with his entire army, and he realized he was outnumbered quite substantially and just ran away. Pyrrhus was then promptly betrayed by his wife. So Ptolemy's daughter had died in the previous year, which ended his alliance with Egypt.
That's
So
I don't know if that's a betrayal as opposed to just dying.
It's not. It's not.
No,
it's
she's not the one. It's the new one.
Just
the new
way,
one.
Oh, the new one.
So basically, his connection to Ptolemy was lost, and that's how alliances
Really
work.
treated the coffin. Jesus.
And so he married a bunch of wives. He suddenly went polygamous. I'm assuming it was Illyrian
Oh, is he
cool
there
with
too?
Illyria. So he did a lot of political marriages, and one of his wives was eventually like, I can't stand this. And she went over to Demetrius' side because she couldn't stand Pyrrhus's other barbarian wives. Demetrius then took the southern territories that Pyrrhus got from Alexander, and marched on Epirus, the capital of Epirus itself, which I think was just Epirus. Pyrrhus decided he would flank him, and apparently the armies actually passed each other on opposite roads, like presumably with enough distance that they couldn't just turn and fight. But just in the distance, you just see two of the same army just walking the wrong way. Just like, shit, they're going for the capital,
I like
guys.
the people on the very edge of the army just looked at me. Yeah, I'm not doing that today. And just go on to the new one.
Just don't
Like
say
that.
anything. Just don't say anything. I hope the commander hasn't seen.
Sir, eyes forward, private. just
like that Umbrella Academy meme where they pass each other in the cars.
Pretty much. Like, Pyrrhus couldn't see anything because he had his war elephants in the way. That's the thing. Pyrrhus has war elephants. So
I'm trying to find the other army, but
where
my
are they?
elephants are too dummy thick that the clap of their ass cheeks is obscuring the sound of the enemy
Can
footfall.
you hear the efforts coming? Yes, the dummy thick elephants are clapping. Anyway.
What is that noise? And just...
Dumbo.
That from the distance.
Did you just say
Oh, the
Dumbo
Roman-
thick?
Dumbo thick.
Oh, God.
The Romans will come to fear the Dumbo thick elephants.
Yeah.
Anyway,
They're saying that all this fuckery in Greece probably just let the Roman Empire just go boom, 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 and grow up from this tiny state.
this is one of the... So, off tangent quickly. One of the main reasons people think Rome got to the power it did is because Alexander decided to go east and not west.
Yeah.
If Alexander had gone west, he would have just flicked the Romans where they, into the sea.
But even still, even still, places like Macedon and stuff were still of equal strength to the Romans when they first fucking started out, but then just all this shit kickery happened.
Yes and no. The reason the Romans probably would have lost... The reason the Romans probably would have lost if Alexander had fought them is because at that point they were still fighting with a phalanx. And so they were... People don't think the Romans were as good in a phalanx as the Greeks were. The Greeks knew what they were doing more than them, blah, blah, blah.
Well, to be fair, they got it down over a couple of years.
When the Romans and the Greeks first actually fought, the Romans had introduced the maniple system, which is that classic checkerboard idea, if you've ever seen old Roman fighting formations, with like Astarte, Principe, and Triare, not chess.
Did you mean chess?
No. Basically, it proved to be the superior fighting system because a phalanx, as we'll see later on the line, does not function on anything other than flat ground.
No, I can understand that.
But anyway, that's in the future. So after the armies passed each other, Pyrrhus then smacked right into a second Macedonian army that had been left as like a garrison in his southern territories. And they basically just immediately started fighting. So Pyrrhus was facing against the army of the lead, I think was called Pontalus? Pontali? I've not written that
He
very
probably hasn't listed at the end, everything else seems to.
very well. Whatever. He was fighting a famous general, basically. Pontalcus, that's it. Pontalcus.
Leon.
So he bumped into the Macedonian general Pontalcus, who was apparently a very, very good general, very famed, and his 10,000 against Pyrrhus's 30,000 were heavily outnumbered, but he had a full veterans while Pyrrhus didn't. So it was quite even fighting until Pyrrhus called Pontalcus out, called him a little bitch, and demanded that they do single combat. Pyrrhus promptly wounded
1v1 me,
Pontalcus
bro!
twice.
Fair enough.
So he didn't kill Pontalcus. Again, doesn't kill someone when he really fucking should. Pontalcus gets away, and then the Epirate army ends up crushing the Macedonians now that their general has been wounded and morale has gone down. And so Pyrrhus then took a bunch of the Macedonians hostage, and then, to show his good graces, released the Macedonian people and ingratiate himself. This is also something Pyrrhus keeps doing. Keeps letting prisoners go.
Releasing the Macedons when he really just should murder them all.
This does feel like Matt's whole thing is just like, how dare you be merciful?
It's not how dare you be merciful. It's the reason I don't think he should be. I'll get into this at the end, but I think it's one of the reasons why he's not nearly as good as people portray him to be. Like, he's definitely a good person, but I don't think he's as good a general as people think he is. You
have to be savage. You have to murder everyone you come across in order to be a good general.
The only person who got away with it was Caesar, and he got stabbed on the floor of a Senate.
Did Caesar get away with it?
Kinda. If you go through, I will do Caesar eventually, but he basically.
Is that a promise or a threat?
That's what Brutus said.
Both. So after the victory, Pyrrhus's troops gave him the name Eagle, or the moniker Eagle, which was couldn't find what it meant, but it means you're very good and you're very important. And I've got a quote. Pyrrhus is quoted as saying, "Through you, I am an eagle, for how should I not be when I have your arms to sustain me?" Which basically makes you think that they're all carrying him upright in like the Dirty Dancing thing, and he's got his arms out.
An eagle.
I legit just thought he started trying to seduce them at the end. Where would I be if not for being in your arms?
It's ancient Greece. He might very well have been.
He probably, yeah. So, the war with Demetrius wound down in roughly 289. Or kind of, it didn't end, but it wound.
They gave up.
They didn't really give up because in 289 Demetrius fell quite ill, so Pyrrhus decided he would invade southern Macedon.
I'll give him a chance to get better.
Yeah, to retake his territory. So Pyrrhus plundered his way with no resistance all the way to the capital of Macedon, and got stopped just outside. At which point Demetrius recovered, and Pyrrhus had a little bit of a panic attack because the Macedon army was much bigger than his. But he was surprised when Demetrius offered peace so that he could start a war with the other Diadoches in Asia Minor to get back old Antigone Greece territory there. So Pyrrhus got off lightly and was like, "Oh, for fuck me."
Asia Minor being modern day Turkey. Yeah.
So Pyrrhus went back home, and then the rest of the Diadoches, all of them, not just some of them, all of them did not want Antigone Greece coming back. So they all united against Demetrius, and Ptolemy basically just popped over and went, "Hey, Pyrrhus, we're good mates, yeah? Do you want to attack Demetrius in the rear while he's at war? We can have all his territory."
You have another daughter? Yeah.
You didn't have another daughter. Pyrrhus said yes. So in 288, Demetrius went and fought Lysimachus in Thrace, and the moment he buggered off, Pyrrhus attacked into Macedon while Ptolemy attacked the islands of the Peloponnese and Seleucus did stuff. Demetrius's army was beaten by Lysimachus. His troops were pissed off at him. It doesn't say why. So Pyrrhus tried to monopolize that and basically sent a bunch of agents to spread propaganda in the army and got a bunch of people to defect to his side, also helped by his reputation of being a nice boy. Demetrius ended up fleeing when he lost another battle, and then he died in obscurity somewhere. He wasn't the last of the Antigonids, but Antigonid territory got squashed back to those southern Greek cities. So he got left to his son Antigonus Gonatus, who isn't really that important. And then basically Pyrrhus met Lysimachus up near the leader of Thrace up near the capital, and because Lysimachus also had a bigger army, decided to back down from trying to be king of Macedon for now.
Okay.
So, but Pyrrhus was then nearly boxed in by Lysimachus because Lysimachus now had Thrace and all of Greece. But then Seleucus decided he would stab Lysimachus in the back and then beat and killed Lysimachus in a battle. But Seleucus was then murdered by a bloke called Ptolemy the Thunderbolt, who then got crowned king of Macedon.
Is he
not the same
a
as Ptolemy
racing
of
car?
Egypt? He's not the same Ptolemy as Ptolemy of Egypt. He's called Ptolemy the Thunderbolt, presumably for some reason that I couldn't find. Pretty cool name though.
Yeah.
Very
It
cool
has
name.
been people have wondered why Pyrrhus backed down, but most people think it's probably because he had his eyes set on going west with the stuff that was happening with Rome.
Yeah.
So, 7 years later, in roughly 281, I'm assuming Pyrrhus had done some other stuff in that time. So he's in his 30s now, I think. Or he would be in his 30s. So just for context, at the bottom of Italy at this time, where the boot is, were a lot of Greek city-states.
Yes.
So the big of which was Tarentum. And Rome had been busy just finishing off the third Samnite War.
Greek at this point. Oh, the fucking
Sicily
Samnite War.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
Rome had just finished off the third Samnite War, or the second Samnite War, one of them. And during that war, the Samnites were like these hill tribes that didn't like Rome, and Rome didn't like them. But the Greek cities had helped the Samnites, so Rome was like, "Whoa, that's a big no-no. We're going to come down and we're going to lay our boots on you." So the people at Tarentum were like, "I don't like this. Rome's pressing into Magna Graecia. Please come help us, Pyrrhus. You're a good boy." So Pyrrhus was like, "All right, I'll come help you, provided you give me supreme command and you pay for the war." And Greece was like, "All right, that works for me." And just to like get Pyrrhus on his way, Ptolemy the Thunderbolt gave him 5,000 men, and we're just like, "Yeah, just go west,
Take the lightning division and go.
go west." So Pyrrhus
Set
ended
the
up
thunderbolt.
go west.
And put down that revolt. Anyway.
So Pyrrhus ended up setting out with a force of 20,000 Sarissa pikemen, 3,000 cavalry, 2,500 missile troops, including Rhodian slingers, which were like the most deadly slingers at the time, and 20 war elephants against the burgeoning might of Rome.
I know you say they were the most deadly, but at the same time, they're still slingers. Like
Slingers were really dangerous.
Surprisingly
really
so.
dangerous.
If you got them, if they got accurate enough, they were pretty nasty.
What?
So they did it in volley fire, basically.
Yeah.
So a shield would protect you, but the armor of the ancient period was not good enough to stop a solid lead ball from
Bronze at
punching
that
your
time,
helmet.
right?
What? Yeah, bronze. Most of it was bronze. When you got to like proper
Just-
Roman era and it
That's
became iron, it was fine. But bronze is a soft metal. Like slingers were, most of the troops weren't armored, Corby. So
that is
slingers
also
were
true.
fucking
If you think about it, it's just a low-powered fucking musket ball. It's a pain in the ass.
basically,
But
yeah.
When did we start using archery?
So in the West, Rome never really used archers. They used auxiliary archers pulled from Persia and Gaul.
They
But it
borrowed
wasn't
them.
until probably 900, 800 that archers started coming back in, probably around the Battle of Hastings.
Sagittarius, I can't remember what the fuck it's called.
That was
Anyway,
that was the god bloke. Anyway, Rome had almost taken over Tarentum when Pyrrhus turned up, and bolstered by another 6,000 Greek hoplites, more Rhodian slingers, and a bunch of skirmishers, he met the 8 Roman legions, which was roughly 40,000 men. So Pyrrhus was outnumbered by about 10,000. So he met 8 Roman legions outside Heraclea. The armies faced each other across a river, and Pyrrhus needed to delay to consolidate his army and fight on flat ground because the phalanx needs to be a solid line. And the moment there's a break in the line of a phalanx, you can break through and stab people at the back. The front of a phalanx is a terrifying place to be because you're having spears thrust at you, but you can't run away because all the people behind you are stopping you running away.
Because
And
you're also in the front of a phalanx.
the logic is basically that as long as the people at the back don't want to run away, the people at the front can't run away.
yeah.
But the moment you flank a phalanx, that all crumbles.
Yeah, because it's like, well, if the people at the back, it tends to be where retreats start, so you cannot
The
retreat
retreat
from
at the
front.
back, and then you can't stop the retreat happening. Yeah.
Yeah.
So Pyrrhus wanted to delay to get flat ground where his phalanx would be able to maintain a solid wall. So he personally scouted the Roman camp and was surprised to find that these barbarians were very organized, and was quoted as saying, "These don't look like barbarians to me. We'll see what they can do soon." So cautiously optimistic. So
Gotta love an optimist.
on the next day, the legions, who didn't want to wait for Pyrrhus, immediately started moving against him, and Pyrrhus had to delay with his skirmishing forces. His skirmishers got slaughtered by the Roman cavalry because the sound of the Romans crossing the river was apparently loud enough to deafen them to everything else, so they didn't even hear the cavalry coming. So,
to be fair, I mean,
like 2,000 men.
Oh, 2,000 men? Something like crossing a river, trying to cross a river at once, did you say? Yeah, it's going to kick up a lot of noise.
The entire Roman army crossed at once. That's 40,000 men.
Yeah, okay, yeah, that's that. I can tell you, that's going to be fairly deafening.
That would be loud. So he still didn't have his army, so Pyrrhus personally led his cavalry against the Roman cavalry and basically had a vanguard battle until the phalanx formed up, and then he fell back to underflanks.
How did his cavalry do against the Roman cavalry?
I think the Romans got annoyed because the Roman cavalry almost fought like legionnaires, in that they would charge into a fight and then they would just move next to each other and stab out in a organized formation, whereas Pyrrhus's cavalry, as I say, would charge, cycle out, charge, cycle out. So I think the Romans got pissy. But during the fighting, Pyrrhus was nearly killed, and he had to get his friend Megalocles, I think it's pronounced.
Megalocles.
Sounds
like a dinosaur more than a fucking Roman.
Megalocles, a Pokemon. Megalocles.
No, but there is a Pokemon called Phalanx. So.
Oh shit. So Pyrrhus apparently had very ostentatious and ornate armor. So Megalocles donned the armor and continued fighting in Pyrrhus's armor in order to keep morale up. Now, anyone familiar with the Odyssey and the Saga of Troy will probably see similarities between Hercules and his bloke that I forget the name of, who also dressed up as Hercules to fight as Achilles. When Achilles was being pissy at the Greek.
I was going to say those two are rather different, Matt.
There we go. So it's got people who aren't sure if what's about to happen did happen, because it is almost exactly the same as what happened with Achilles and Patroclus, where Patroclus goes out and, spoilers, Megalocles dies. Patroclus also got killed in the Troy saga, and it ruined the Greek morale, and Achilles had to come out and rally them, so Pyrrhus has to get up and rally his troops, because his troops see Megalocles' head stuck on a pike and being paraded in front of the army, but it's got Pyrrhus' helmet on, so they all think Pyrrhus is dead. And so Pyrrhus has to get on his horse and rally them. And then the battle was won when the elephants hit the flanks and basically scared the Roman cavalry to run through their own line, and then the Romans ran across the river. Now, Pyrrhus only lost 4,000 men, but that's dead. It doesn't say how many were wounded. And he lost 4,000 plus veterans dead. That's really bad, including officers. And he also took a bunch of Roman prisoners. So, the rest of the year 281, 280 saw Pyrrhus basically advancing towards Rome. There were a couple more skirmishes. There was a bit of weird intrigue on the way. He sent people over to Rome to try and bribe them to end the war. Rome said, no, we're too proud. Rome then sent a diplomat to try and get Pyrrhus to get the prisoners back. Pyrrhus tried to scare him with an elephant. The Roman guy wasn't scared. Then Pyrrhus's physician promised to poison Pyrrhus if the Roman guy wanted him to. The Roman guy then told Pyrrhus that the physician would do that, and then Pyrrhus is like, oh, you're a bro. Do you want to be part of my companion cavalry? And the guy went, no, I can't, I'm Roman. And then he's apparently quoted as saying, because if I were to join them, they would soon want me as their king instead of you. So just a bit of banter and back and forth. And then Pyrrhus, as a show of good faith, let all his Roman prisoners go, which he'd come to regret because they'd all be in the next fight against him. because one of the things that impressed Pyrrhus the most was how quickly the Romans could recreate their army and get it on the battlefield. Because one of the reasons the Romans were so good and so what they did and so powerful is they could keep churning out an army because they had like a thoroughly martial society. It's one of the reasons Hannibal lost is because every time he beat a Roman army, the Romans would make a new army. So he couldn't. He just couldn't. It was essentially the Romans would win through attrition, and Pyrrhus is on the losing end of that because he can't easily reinforce his army. So Pyrrhus actually got to one of the big Roman cities, the second biggest city called Capua, sieged it, didn't manage to take it. He then got rebuffed at Neapolis, and then he got within 6 kilometers of Rome before having to retreat because he was going to get encircled. And then he went to Tarentum for the winter. Pyrrhus got reinforced in 279 by a bunch of Samnites and Free Greeks, and then marched up the east coast to try and find more support. The Romans met him with another river crossing with 9 legions, so that's 45,000 men, against now Pyrrhus's 43,000 strong army. So equal footing. So you'd think Pyrrhus would do much better, given that he wasn't outnumbered.
No.
At the Battle of Asculum, this saw the Romans bring along an important note. The Romans brought along 300 anti-elephant wagons. So they'd spent a year making anti-elephant wagons, which are just wagons with giant metal harpoons on them.
Effective against the elephants.
To be fair, if you knew there were going to be elephants, an anti-elephant wagon sounds appropriate. Any other situation, very inappropriate. Do not take to a funeral.
I'm not gonna lie, I am just picturing like a fucking pump wagon from Warhammer, just elephant-sized.
Based on the knowledge that the Romans didn't use these against Hannibal, how do you think they work out?
Not too anti?
Not very well.
Oh no, we brought the pro-elephant.
So the Battle of Asculum was mostly fought on flat ground, and Pyrrhus got the upper hand initially, but then it ended up going onto hilly ground, and then the phalanx broke up, and it was inconclusive fighting for a while. Pyrrhus had were big cavalry fights on the wings, and Pyrrhus decided he wanted to win the cavalry fights in order to crush the infantry, the elephants. So he sent the elephants in, and so the Romans sent in the war wagons. The Romans didn't realize that Pyrrhus had already got a bunch of light skirmishers with the elephants. So the skirmishers just killed everyone on the wagons.
Oh no, he thought to potentially have some sort of defense for the elephants.
Yeah.
Oh shit. We never would have thought this.
So
it's all right. I brought my anti-wagon.
This is anti-wagon Will. Fear him.
It came really close though, because as the elephants got past the wagons, Pyrrhus's center where the Samnites were broke, so Pyrrhus had to plug it with his own cavalry and him. And then the elephants hit the flanks and broke the Roman army, but the Romans retreated in good order. Pyrrhus had won. Unfortunately, another smaller Roman force, like 2,000 men, had found Pyrrhus's camp and burned it. So Pyrrhus had no supplies, no nothing. And he'd also lost another 3,300 troops dead, mostly veterans again. Tons wounded. So surveying the damage of his camp, he famously stated, "One more such victory and we are undone." And this is where we get the term Pyrrhic victory from, which is a triumph so costly that it all but negates victory. So at this point, Pyrrhus is like, essentially is literally that. If we keep fighting like we're fighting, Rome will win because they just have more men than us.
Yeah. That's why I went, oh no, as soon as you had Pyrrhus, because I knew the Pyrrhic victory.
Meanwhile, in Macedon, Ptolemy the Thunderbolt was killed in a battle with Gallic invaders.
Oh no.
Gaelic invaders, even.
He got earthed.
He got earthed. Pyrrhus was invited to be king of Macedon, but declined, instead taking up an offer from Sicily, who wanted him to drive off the invading Carthaginians.
Ooh.
So
something tells me declining an invitation from a king is not a great move.
To be king.
Oh.
Yeah.
So he declined to be king of Macedon.
It's still not a great move.
Not a great move.
Especially to go and
As
fight...
we'll see when he visits
Especially
Sicily.
to go and fight Carthaginians.
Well, Pyrrhus does quite good against the Carthaginians. With apparently ambitions to conquer the city of Carthage itself. Pyrrhus set off with only 10,000 men.
How many elephants?
Left Tarentum. Tarentum were not happy about this because he's just upping and leaving in the middle of a war with Rome. He quickly landed on Sicily, liberated a couple of towns, liberated Syracuse, which was the biggest city, and then got the Syracusan fleet and slapped the Carthaginian fleet around for a bit. So, in 278, Pyrrhus basically spent the entire time pretty much on holiday in Sicily, easily taking the Carthaginian holdings. He left them in the end with only the port of Lilybaeum, don't know how to pronounce it, which is the southwestern tip of the island. Throughout all this, Pyrrhus was fighting, like, first over the walls, in the thick of the fighting, like, really building him up as, like, yes, I'm a really good fighter, look at me, I'm a hero of the ages. Unfortunately, in order to fund this war, he had levied a fuck ton of taxes on the Sicilians, and the Sicilians went, fuck this shit, and revolted against him. And Pyrrhus had to quickly leave before they killed him. So he didn't end up conquering Carthage. Also, in his absence, Rome had undone all the gains he made and were currently pressing against the Greeks in Magna Graecia again. So it took him, for some reason, it took him 3 years to get back to the boot of Italy. So I can only assume he took his fucking sweet ass time.
Took a detour to Spain.
Stopped to smell the roses on the way.
Never take a detour to Spain, Jesus Christ.
In 275, he got back to Tarentum, and needless to say, his reputation had suffered from leaving them. And he did not get any support from the Samnites or the Italian allies this time round. They were like, no, you left us, Rome's going to win, would rather stick with the Romans. Even the Greek city-states weren't that forthcoming. He'd started to get a reputation for being a bit of a tyrant, because obviously these are all city-states and not used to having someone come in and go, oh, I'm in charge, you prick. So Pyrrhus got what army he could and met Rome at Beneventum. Here, Pyrrhus thought he'd be smart and flank with a quarter of his army and something like at least 8 of his elephants over a hill during the night to try and flank the Romans at night. Now, everybody got lost because they didn't know where they were. They had no torches up. They couldn't see anything. And all the Romans heard elephants on the hill and were like, that's suspicious as fuck.
I wonder what that could be.
That's a suspiciously big deer.
So, come the morning, the plan was to fight Rome at night.
Is that an owl?
That's a weird sounding cow. The plan was to fight the Romans at night, so all of Pyrrhus's army was stood up in formation all night, waiting for the trumpets. The trumpets didn't come, and in the morning, the Epiroan forces on the flank were spotted by the Romans, who promptly surrounded them and murdered them all. And then they turned on Pyrrhus's main army and pretty much started pushing Pyrrhus's army back immediately because they'd started to work out how to beat the phalanx at this point. And Pyrrhus decided he would use the old faithful of getting the elephants to just flank around and crush him. So instead of using anti-elephant wagons, the Romans just threw a fuck ton of spears at the elephants, and the elephants panicked and ran through Pyrrhus's own lines. And Pyrrhus ended up having to pull back in still an organized retreat, but yeah. Needless to say, Pyrrhus was slightly deterred and promptly abandoned the Greek city-states back to Epirus because he had no money. Just basically, Rome then basically took those city-states, and Pyrrhus is to blame for that, though Pyrrhus is quoted as saying, as he left, what a field we are leaving for the Romans and Carthaginians to play upon, or something along that line. He basically knew that the Punic Wars were going to happen, which is the wars between Carthage and Rome.
It's fairly easy to spot with the two big powers outreaching. There's going to be some sort of interaction. Not just going to be bestest friends. No, it's not going to happen.
So when Pyrrhus landed back in Epirus, he immediately attacked Macedon. At this point, Macedon had been taken over by Antigonus Gonatas, the son of Demetrius. So Macedon was back in Antigonid hands. He met them at the Battle of the Aeus River, which, I don't know, I said river so weirdly then. Pyrrhus broke the Antigonids' left flank very quickly, took control of their elephants, and then before smashing his elephants into the Antigonid line, basically got the fighting to stop and just called out all the Macedonian generals he knew by name and just was like, hey, come over to my side. And all the Macedonian generals did come over to his side.
Charisma check.
He then let Antigonus Donatus go. Yet another person he's let go. And then he, for whatever reason though, didn't finish the Macedonians off. So he let Antigonus go, didn't march on the capital, didn't make himself king of Macedon. He let them go and decided to turn south. And I think his logic was, well, I'll take the Antigonid holdings down there, because we thought they were dead and they keep coming up there. And then when he got there, he decided he wanted to attack Sparta instead. This doesn't go well. So he lied to the Spartans and basically said, hey, yes, I'm going to come and take the Antigonid Greek cities down here. And so the Spartans were very surprised when he turned up at Sparta. Sparta didn't have its army out, was busy in Crete. So Pyrrhus was like, oh, this will be really easy. I can take Sparta, subjugate them. He got stopped by the garrison, the Spartan youths, and the Spartan woman, who built a very long trench in front of the entryway to Sparta and then beat Pyrrhus back.
He got defeated by a big hole.
He got defeated by a big hole.
Big old hole in the ground.
To be fair, if they built a trench, they are fucking years ahead of where warfare was going.
Yeah.
So, like, off topic again very quickly. In Caesar's civil wars, when he was fighting Pompey, one of the big battles, I think it was Dyrrhachium. Caesar was trying to box Pompey in so that he couldn't get any supplies, and so Pompey knew what Caesar was doing, so it was a race to build walls and trenches before they could block each other in. And what ended up happening is people would sortie between the trenches and literally do trench warfare. So trench warfare, 2,000 years before trench warfare should have been a thing.
That's always been the way of it. Just people do random shit. It seems anachronistic as hell, but it seems to work. It's just like Jan's with his bloody war wagons.
Pyrrhus got driven off, and things kind of went a bit downhill for him. This was by 272. He kept getting beaten by the various armies around him. He kept getting ambushed. His son got killed in one of the ambushes. And all the people he'd let go were starting to come and stab him. So he ended up retreating to a nearby city called Argos. Argos didn't have a garrison. His plan was to take it, not the store.
But it had a big book where you could leaf through and find things to buy.
The enemies turn up and it's like order 157, Pyrrhus, please.
Yeah, we don't have that here. We have to go out back for it.
So Pyrrhus ended up breaking into the city, and it was at night, and it was like a horrendous street fighting night fight. And he didn't realize how screwed he was until come the morning when the Spartans who had killed his son turned up, as well as Antigonus. I think Antigonus Gonatas turned up as well, who he hadn't killed in the previous battle, all went and converged into the city and started surrounding him. So Pyrrhus was like, you know what? It's a good idea to retreat. Unfortunately, the order got misinterpreted, and the elephants that were outside were ordered in and blocked the entryway, so Pyrrhus's armies just smacked into each other, and it became this chaotic mess. One of the elephants got stuck in the archway. It was real bad. During the retreat, Pyrrhus was wounded by apparently just some kid who was trying to defend his home, wounded Pyrrhus. Pyrrhus almost killed him. And in one of the most unceremonious deaths of the ancient world, Pyrrhus was clobbered by the kid's mum, who threw a tile from a roof and got him in the head with it. Pyrrhus bled out on the floor of Argos and was unceremoniously beheaded.
That's clear up in R4.
Death by roof tile.
On the floor of the Argos.
So, put that in the catalogue.
That is the end of Pyrrhus of Epirus. Now, I'm not going to argue that Pyrrhus wasn't a good general. He was clearly a good general, but only in the fact that he was an excellent tactician. He was a shit strategist. And that is my takeaway from this. Like, he won as many battles as he lost. This isn't a case of Aurelian, where Aurelian won all but that one battle where he'd marched for days and got ambushed at night. And then even then his army wasn't that badly damaged. Pyrrhus lost as many as he won, and even those he won, it's like with against Rome, was too costly to win. I don't think he was as good as people say he was. And the whole I think one of the big issues that he never did defeat in detail. He never completely defeated the opponent he was fighting, and then it came to bite him in the ass later. The whole part of the reason he died at Argos, at least in my historian opinion, speaking as someone,
it's never not going to be funny when you say that.
Is yeah, I know.
I'm always just picturing the store.
The whole reason he got cornered in pinned and killed by a roof tile is because he didn't finish the Spartans off, and he didn't finish Antigonus Gonatas off.
And he didn't finish that kid's mother.
And he didn't finish the kid's mother off. And just releasing all the prisoners, yes, it gets you a good reputation, but it came back to bite him in the ass because he ended up having to fight them again. And when you compare that to Caesar, who also pardoned all his enemies, the difference was that Caesar was pardoning Romans, and the Romans all got on board on Caesar's side afterwards, whereas the people Pyrrhus was releasing, he was just going to have to fight again. But I'm not saying Pyrrhus should have, killed them all, but at least he should have asked for money. Then he could have bought more troops. He's an interesting historical figure. I think I've come away with a less impressed opinion than a lot of people. I also think he did Carthage and Hannibal no favors by introducing the Romans to the elephant. He did them no favors because the Romans were ready to fight elephants when Hannibal turned up. And they weren't ready for Hannibal. That's a different story. But yeah, that is the life and times of Pyrrhus of Epirus. And it only took me an hour. Ha!
You still hold the record for the longest segment.
Well,
very good.
Thank you all for listening to this week's Fact vs. Fiction. As we say every time, we do have a Twitter at F vs. F official with big chonky Fs. And Corby and
can we petition to change capitals to chonky?
Chonky.
Let me just put on chonky locks.
This is my email address, no chonks. Yeah.
And obviously Corby and Tom have their own social medias.
I'm gonna say things.
Their own things, their own stuff.
Yeah, I have a Twitter which is at randomjot and a YouTube channel which is Tom H. Jordan. Might be putting up some book reviews soon. I've been thinking about doing that, so
they may or may not already be up by the time this episode shows its face in March.
Because of our schedule, it's hard to say if they're up or not.
Yeah.
Well, I also have a YouTube channel and a Twitter. You can find both of them at Gaius Nyx. That's GUIAS MYX. And you can also find me on Twitch, although I haven't streamed anything recently and probably should. You can find me for Higurashi, which may or may not be spoken about at some point, because it's actually really good. You ever seen a man tear his own throat out?
You ever seen a grown man naked? You like gladiator fights?
You ever been in a Turkish prison?
I love that one. That thought always gets me.
John, take us out by splitting my fingers.
Take us out like Franz Ferdinand.
I say, don't you know?
You don't know. No. Anyway, what I'm going to talk about today is, this quick fact is basically Napoleon's most upsetting defeat. I'd say this is worse than Waterloo. This is 8 years earlier.
Oh, I know which one it is.
Yeah, happened in July 1807 after he signed the treaties of Tilsit, which ended the war between the Empire and Russia. The Emperor proposed a rabbit hunt, and they asked his chief of staff, Alexander Berthier, to sort it out. Now, he arranged outdoor luncheon, invited most of the military's biggest brass, everything, and collected at least hundreds of bunnies. Some people say thousands. Somewhere between a good couple of 100 and 3,000 is the estimates.
That is a big disparity in numbers.
I know. But either way, there was a lot of rabbits. So I'd say it's a safe bet there's at least 500. And they caged them all along the fringes of the grassy field. And the Napoleon, along with other beaters and gun bearers, got ready, and the rabbits were released from the cages. But they didn't scurry and run away. They charged directly towards Napoleon and his men. At the time, the world's most powerful man in the world. And they laughed at first, but then their concern grew. The rabbits allegedly swarmed the emperor's legs and started climbing up his jacket. He tried shooting them with his riding crop as his men grabbed sticks, tried chasing them. He didn't stop them. He eventually retreated to his carriage. Still didn't stop. The rabbits were divided, apparently, according to this, it divided into two wings and pulled around the flanks of the party head toward the imperial coach. And the flood of
using military terms.
yes, the flood of they actually quite a few of them got into the carriage, and the attack only stopped as the coach rolled away, which means that Napoleon was defeated by rabbits, and he ran from the battle.
Amazing.
Now the main problem with this is because they picked tamed rabbits and not wild rabbits. Supposed to pick wild rabbits for this because the tamed rabbits just saw Napoleon as the guy who was going to feed them, so they just chased him down wanting food. They would not leave him alone. And
I stand corrected. I had not heard of that.
You had not heard of that. I know.
I like to imagine, like, among like the next few years, Napoleon might just see a rabbit every now and then and be like, "Is it one of them?"
I like to think he got flashbacks of rabbits at Waterloo. Oh, no, not again.
The last thing. Oh.
You think of that Blackadder episode where it's the Highwayman episode, and that woman just shoots squirrels randomly.
Rabbit's dynamite.
I mean, sees a rabbit, he just shoots it.
Yeah, it's just all. I just pictured like all the rabbits from Monty Python.
Yes,
they're all just that.
Yes.
Rabbits with bloodlust.